English shadowing improves speaking skills because it trains learners to copy native pronunciation and natural rhythm in real time. When a learner listens to a native speaker and immediately repeats the words, the brain starts matching sounds, stress, and intonation patterns automatically. This process is very different from traditional speaking practice where learners read silently or speak after long pauses. Shadowing forces the mouth, ears, and brain to work together, which helps develop muscle memory for correct pronunciation. Over time, learners begin to produce sounds more accurately without consciously thinking about each word. Another important benefit of shadowing is that it exposes learners to natural English, not textbook English. Native speakers connect words, reduce sounds, and change intonation depending on emotion or meaning. By shadowing these patterns, learners gradually sound more natural and less robotic. Instead of pronouncing each word separately, they learn how English really flows in conversations. This improves clarity and makes speech easier for listeners to understand. Learners also become more comfortable with fast speech, which is often challenging for non-native speakers. Shadowing also builds confidence in speaking because it removes the pressure of creating sentences from scratch. The learner does not need to worry about grammar or vocabulary choices while shadowing. They only focus on copying what they hear. This reduces anxiety and allows more practice time without fear of making mistakes. As confidence grows, learners feel more willing to speak English in real-life situations. They start trusting their ability to pronounce words correctly and keep up with conversations. In addition, shadowing helps improve rhythm and sentence stress, which are key parts of speaking clearly. English is a stress-timed language, meaning some words are stressed more than others. Many learners struggle because they use equal stress on all words. Shadowing helps them feel the natural beat of English sentences. This makes their speech sound smoother and more engaging. With regular practice, learners begin to internalize these patterns and use them naturally when speaking on their own, especially during conversations, presentations, or reading aloud in front of others. Listening carefully comes first in English. Shadowing because it creates a clear understanding of how the language truly sounds before trying to speak it. When learners begin by listening, they train their ears to recognize pronunciation, rhythm, stress, and intonation. This step is important because English is not always spoken the way it is written. Many sounds are connected, reduced, or even dropped in natural speech. Without careful listening, learners may pronounce words incorrectly or speak in an unnatural way. By listening first, they become familiar with the speaker's pace and style, which prepares them for accurate repetition. Careful listening also helps learners avoid developing bad speaking habits. If a learner starts shadowing without fully understanding the sounds, they may repeat mistakes again and again. Listening allows them to notice how vowels and consonants are formed and how sentences rise and fall in tone. This awareness makes it easier to copy the speaker correctly. Over time, the learner's pronunciation improves because they are imitating accurate models rather than guessing how words should sound. Another benefit of listening first is that it improves comprehension and focus. When learners listen without speaking, they can concentrate fully on understanding the meaning as well as the sound. This reduces confusion and builds confidence. Once they understand what is being said, shadowing becomes less stressful and more natural. The brain processes information more smoothly, making it easier to keep up with the speaker during practice. Listening also prepares the brain for speaking by increasing familiarity with common phrases and sentence patterns. When learners hear the same expressions repeatedly, they begin to remember them automatically. This mental preparation allows smoother speech during shadowing and later in real conversations. Instead of struggling to keep up, learners feel more relaxed and in control. Most importantly, listening first encourages patience and careful learning. It reminds learners that speaking well begins with hearing well. This step builds a strong foundation that supports clear pronunciation, better rhythm, and more confident communication. With regular practice, careful listening helps learners speak English more naturally and accurately in everyday situations. Asterisk reading out loud builds confidence because it helps learners become comfortable with hearing their own voice in English. Many learners feel shy or nervous when speaking because they are not used to how they sound in a foreign language. When they read silently, they avoid this discomfort, but reading out loud removes that fear gradually. By practicing regularly, learners begin to accept their voice and feel less embarrassed about making mistakes. This repeated exposure reduces anxiety and creates a safe space to practice speaking without judgment. Another way reading out loud builds confidence is by improving pronunciation and clarity. When learners speak aloud, they can hear their own mistakes and correct them. This active involvement makes learning more effective than silent reading. As pronunciation improves, learners feel more assured about their ability to speak clearly. Confidence grows when they notice that words sound better and sentences flow more smoothly. Over time, learners trust their speaking skills and worry less about sounding incorrect. Reading out loud also strengthens fluency and speaking rhythm. English has a natural pace and stress pattern that can only be practiced through speaking. When learners read aloud, they learn where to pause, which words to stress, and how to connect sounds. This practice helps speech sound more natural and less forced. As fluency increases, learners feel more confident expressing themselves because they can speak without frequent stops or hesitation. In addition, reading out loud helps learners become familiar with sentence structures and vocabulary in a practical way. Seeing and speaking the words at the same time reinforces memory. This makes it easier to recall words when speaking spontaneously. Confidence improves when learners know they have the language, tools they need to communicate their ideas clearly. They no longer feel lost or unsure during conversations. Most importantly, reading out loud teaches learners that making mistakes is part of learning. When they practice alone or in a comfortable environment, mistakes feel less serious. This mindset encourages experimentation and growth. As learners become less afraid of errors, they speak more freely and naturally. This freedom builds strong confidence, allowing learners to participate actively in conversations, presentations, and daily communication in English with greater ease. Daily practice is essential for noticeable improvement because language learning depends on consistency rather than occasional effort. When learners practice speaking or shadowing only once in a while, progress is slow and skills are easily forgotten. Regular daily practice keeps English fresh in the mind and allows the brain to strengthen connections related to pronunciation, listening, and fluency. Even short practice sessions each day are more effective than long, irregular sessions because they help build steady habits that support long-term learning. Another reason daily practice matters is that speaking skills develop gradually through repetition. Pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation cannot be mastered in a single session. By practicing every day, learners repeatedly expose themselves to correct language patterns. This repetition helps sounds and sentence structures become automatic. Over time, learners no longer need to think carefully about each word they say. This automatic response makes speaking smoother and more natural, which is a clear sign of improvement. Daily practice also builds confidence by creating familiarity. When learners practice every day, speaking English becomes a normal part of their routine rather than a stressful task. The fear of speaking decreases because the language feels less foreign. Each day of practice adds a small success, such as pronouncing a word correctly or keeping up with an audio recording. These small achievements motivate learners to continue and help them believe in their ability to improve. In addition, daily practice helps learners notice and correct mistakes more effectively. When practice is frequent, learners can quickly recognize patterns in their errors and adjust them before they become habits. Regular feedback, even self-correction, leads to faster improvement. Gaps in practice often cause learners to repeat. the same mistakes without progress. Consistency allows learning to move forward smoothly. Most importantly, daily practice develops discipline and patience in language learning. It teaches learners that improvement takes time and effort. By committing to a daily routine, learners take control of their progress and create lasting change. This steady effort leads to clearer pronunciation, better fluency, and stronger confidence in speaking English in real-life situations over time. Asterisk shadowing helps improve pronunciation, fluency, and speed at the same time because it combines listening and speaking into one continuous activity. When learners repeat what they hear immediately, they are not only copying sounds but also practicing the rhythm and flow of English. This simultaneous practice strengthens multiple aspects of speaking. Pronunciation improves as learners mimic the exact sounds. Fluency develops as they follow the pace of a native speaker. And speed naturally increases because the exercise trains them to think and speak quickly in English. One reason shadowing is effective is that it exposes learners to connected speech, which is how English is spoken in real life. Words are often linked together, vowels are reduced, and certain consonants are softened or dropped. By shadowing, learners practice these features repeatedly. Over time, their pronunciation becomes more natural, and they sound less like a non-native speaker reading word by word. This exposure also helps learners recognize patterns in sentences, which makes speaking more fluid and less hesitant. Shadowing also improves fluency because it encourages learners to speak without pausing excessively. Many learners struggle with long pauses as they try to think of the next word or phrase. In shadowing, the audio guides them, forcing them to keep up with the flow. This constant repetition helps train the brain to anticipate language patterns and respond more quickly. As a result, learners become more comfortable speaking continuously in conversations rather than stopping frequently to translate or search for words. In addition, shadowing increases speaking speed in a controlled way. Learners gradually adapt to faster speech as they follow the audio. Unlike rushing or memorizing words, shadowing allows learners to practice speed while maintaining accuracy and clarity. This balance is important because speaking too quickly without correct pronunciation can make communication difficult. Regular shadowing ensures that learners develop both speed and precision at the same time. Most importantly, shadowing strengthens listening and speaking simultaneously. By copying the rhythm, tone, and pace of a speaker, learners internalize natural patterns of English. This integrated practice develops confidence and skill in real conversations, reading aloud, or public speaking situations. Over time, learners notice significant improvement in the clarity, fluency, and naturalness of their English speech. Shadowing helps learners think directly in English because it trains the brain to process the language naturally rather than translating from their native tongue. When learners repeat what they hear immediately, they are forced to respond in real time, which reduces the habit of mentally converting words from their first language. This direct engagement strengthens their ability to understand and produce English spontaneously. Over time, the brain becomes accustomed to processing English patterns, vocabulary, and sentence structures as a natural way of thinking, which is crucial for fluent communication. Another benefit is that shadowing develops automaticity in language use. By continuously imitating native speakers, learners internalize common phrases, expressions, and grammatical structures. Instead of pausing to think about how to construct a sentence, they can retrieve words and patterns instinctively. This automatic recall allows learners to respond more quickly in conversations, presentations, or discussions, making their English sound smoother and more confident. The more frequently they practice, the faster the brain adapts to thinking in English without conscious effort. Shadowing also strengthens listening comprehension, which supports thinking in English. By focusing closely on the speaker's pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm, learners begin to anticipate meaning and context without needing translation. This skill is essential in real-life interactions where responses must be immediate. The more learners practice shadowing, the more their brains recognize patterns and understand nuances of English, from subtle changes in tone to emphasis on certain words, further reinforcing direct thinking in the language. In addition, shadowing helps learners become comfortable with expressing complex ideas naturally. As they follow native speech in real time, they practice not only words, but also the flow of sentences and the way ideas are connected. This continuous exposure trains the mind to organize thoughts in English rather than constructing them first in the native language and then translating gradually. Learners notice that speaking and thinking in English becomes faster, easier, and more instinctive. Ultimately, thinking in English through shadowing transforms the way learners communicate, making their speech more natural, confident, and fluent. It bridges the gap between understanding and speaking, turning knowledge into action. By practicing consistently, learners can experience the freedom of expressing themselves in English effortlessly, as if the language itself is becoming a part of their daily thoughts, opening doors to a world of possibilities and self-expression.